You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew. Welcome to a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. Today, we've got a host of authors on to answer one of the most frequent questions that's asked of any author. We're asking them, what is your favorite childhood book? And today to answer, we have on Amanda Labonte, author of the Call of the Sea series. Amanda Labonte, what was your favorite childhood book?
Childhood book?
Yeah.
I love Anne of Green Gables.
Yes, we've talked about that. You've given me that one to read before.
But also, because that's the one that everybody goes to for Lucy Maud Montgomery, but her Emily series is actually better. I was a little older when I finally read the Emily series, but that one actually resonated more.
The Emily series is almost like proto-YA.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a series. It followed, she's on... she's clearly becoming more and more herself as it goes on, and even though it's not even it doesn't have any of the modern YA tropes of genre fiction. It's I think you're right. I think it really follows the development of a character through their key younger years.
I don't think Montgomery gets the credit she deserves. Like Tolkien is just known as the godfather of fantasy, but she's really the godfather of that genre. And godmother, whatever you want to say. She doesn't get that same level of credit, I don't think.
No, I think really and maybe I'm just limited in what I was exposed to, but I didn't read and I've read a lot of classics. Not a lot deal with, Dickens did a lot with kids that age, but his stuff was aimed at an adult audience. So it was, even Oliver Twist is very...
It's from the eyes of an adult.
It's from the eyes of an adult, and it's not even really child appropriate in a lot of ways, even though the main character is Oliver Twist. There's some relationships and stuff going on with the adults around that just I wouldn't let my kids watch, but when they were young. But yeah, no, you're right. I think, and maybe that's why I like her so much. It never occurred to me that of all of the older kind of classic literature I read, she was writing YA.
Yeah.
Realistically, yeah. It was for I read it when I was young, but I could read it now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Yasmine Dalool, one of the authors featured in Mythology from the Rock. Yasmine, what is your favorite childhood book? A book intended for children, or that you read when you were a child, or anything like that?
Anything by Judy Blume.
I see.
Fudge, definitely. Judy Blume.
Yeah.
Here's to You, Rachel Robinson. It's Not the End of the World. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
I like that one, yeah.
Yeah, that one was a good one. Deanie. I loved Deanie. Okay. And also, I'm sorry, The Babysitter's Club. And anyone who doesn't agree, who is born between 1970 and 1990 is a liar.
The Babysitter's Club was awesome. The
Babysitter's Club was amazing. And the Ramona Quimby books. There's so many.
Yeah. I love the idea of the Babysitter's Club, the rotating protagonist. You know what I mean? Did you know that wasn't written by one person, that it was a slipstream, it was a pseudonym, and each writer wrote one of the characters, and that's how they did that.
Wait, did Anna Martin not exist? Or she was a real person, right?
No.
I knew that maybe she had ghostwriters later because you can always tell that tones change and stuff. So, when you get to these things make sense later, but I always thought she was at least like the creator, a real person.
I don't think she. Let me double check.
I think she's a real person. She has to be. There has to be something. And she always said that she was she was Marianne. Anyway, also Little Women. I can't believe I didn't say Little Women. Little Women was my favorite growing up.
Martin, Babysitters Club.
Mm-hmm. And M. Martin.
Anne M. Martin. Is Anne M. Martin
real?
Real. Is Anne M. Martin real? Oh yes, she was real.
God, okay. I thought this was like Face Under Fire all over again.
Yeah, no, that was a bad day. Yeah.
Very bad day.
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Matthew Daniels, the author of The Diary of Knives. Matthew Daniels, what is your favorite childhood book? Your favorite book you read as a child, whether it was intended for children or not?
Let's see. The earliest ones that I can remember that really got me excited about books were, there was the Mr. Men ones. I used to really enjoy those.
Mr. Men?
Yeah, I used to love those stories. I don't remember much about them now. They were like little cartoony characters who would be like Mrs. Sad or Mr.
Oh,
Lonely.
I love those. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that kind of stuff were some of my early exposures to the joy of reading and the freedom of imagination.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of those kinds of shared experience stories. The Very Hungry Caterpillar was another one that stands out. Robert Munch, The Paperbag Princess.
Yes, that is a great one.
That was a transformative story for me.
It has to do with dragons, too. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do love my dragons. And it was just really interesting to me because even as a child at that age, I don't think frustrated is the right word, but I was having trouble with the fact that all of the stories that I was into, Darkwing Duck, X-Men, G.I. Joe, He-Man, all this kind of stuff, your characters were always dudes. Okay. You might have a female sidekick or something, but it was rare to get somebody like Gadget from the Rescue Rangers, who has autonomy and is more than just a romantic interest, is a part of the team as an equal with all of the others and has real things to contribute and feelings and personality and all of this.
Penny from Inspector Gadget is my go-to.
Yes.
Because she's the protagonist as far as I'm concerned.
Example. I never would have thought of it that way, especially as a kid watching Inspector Gadget, but looking at it now, yeah, it's kind of like realizing that Sam Gamgee is the hero of Lord of the Rings. Yeah. It's a turning point in your understanding of a story. But yeah, that was something that I was really looking for a lot as a kid because I've always been fascinated with other perspectives, and females are kind of an obvious go-to for a perspective that is different from mine. Okay. And that goes for all of them. People whose first language is not English, people who look differently than I do for any number of reasons, right? Yeah. I'm always interested in finding out what's out there. And what other people have to say, and so on.
Sounds healthy.
So yeah, most of my stories, most of the ones that I've read, I should say, the books that I've been into, the ones that I got excited about as a kid, and even going into my teenage years, there was a lot of, I got into medical thrillers for a long time. I was really into the science of it and just like following these people who are just really passionate about helping people and running into all these interesting problems. And just stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next we have Jennifer Shelby, author in the Slipstreamer saga from Engine Book called Plague of the Dreamless. From your experience, Jennifer Shelby, what was your favorite childhood book?
Emily of New Moon. No question. I
love that one.
Yes, I must have read that trilogy. Just as soon as I was done, I'd start it over from the beginning again. And I don't know if the last one really resonated as well as the first two because I was young, but I love them. I have the fondest memories of them, and they're so tattered now. Like, I had to get new ones so that my daughter can read them when she's ready.
Awesome. Montgomery is often the answer to that question. A few of my authors have answered with the Anne of Green Gables series. You're the first one to say. Usually they'll say New Moon as like an afterthought, but and say that one. You're the first one to say like Emily of New Moon first, which I enjoy because that was of those two works by Montgomery. New Moon is the one I go. There was something about it where it's almost like it's way ahead of its time. Like that's almost where YA is now, where it's like a little bit supernatural historical fiction. You know what I mean?
Yep, and it had like some real creepy elements too that worked, and they weren't so creepy that they, bother you too much, but they're definitely there.
Yeah, big time. It was really ahead of its time. Like it does not get the credit, or the author doesn't get the credit she deserves for basically creating the YA supernatural fiction market like way before Twilight and Hunger Games and all that did.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think I've read everything she's written, and I love them all, but Emily definitely stands out. Maybe, I mean, certainly as writers, we're gonna Emily's gonna resonate, but there's a lot to that, and like, if you think about the work that went into it too, because she has so many quotes and quips of things that Emily wrote that were in Emily's voice and not in Lucy Maud Montgomery's voice, and like just little things like that, they're just so phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's really hard to write in another voice like that, to write someone writing. You know what I mean?
I don't think I could do it at this point. I mean, now I kind of want to try, but that would be very challenging. And yeah, she really nailed it.
Go a step further when you try it. Like, write a story about a character who's a writer, so they write their voices, but that character is also writing a story about a writer, so it steps one step further. So the whole story will be in your voice, but then parts of it will have to be in the first author's voice, and parts of it will have to be in the second fictional author's voice, but it'll be a little bit of all three authors before it in the inception loop. Like, it'll be little bits of
wow. Maybe that could be a future Slim Streamer's book.
yeah. And it turns out that like that's how Cassidy realizes she's fictional. like it keeps just going down, and then eventually, like 5 levels down, it's a Cassidy story.
I love it. It's just like, stories all the way down.
Yeah, exactly. And like the third one down could be Stephen King, but we won't call it Stephen King for copyright reasons.
Maybe we could use John Dobbin.
Yeah. Fun. We're back. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Tracy Walden. She recently just put out a book through Breakwater Books called Send More Tourists. The last ones were delicious.
Of course.
Yep. Tracy, what was your favorite childhood book? Your favorite book you read as a child?
My favorite childhood book was Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. It's about this girl and her brother who everybody leaves the island that they're living on, and they end up getting left behind, and they have to fend for themselves. I guess it's like a young adult book, maybe. Prior to that, it would have probably been Alice in Wonderland, which is pretty typical, but not the little golden books version, like the full book version.
Gotcha. The legit version.
The actual real Alice in Wonderland, yeah.
Speaking of watered down versions, like not the little golden books version, but when I was young, I didn't realize, have you ever seen the Classics Illustrated books?
Classics Illustrated, sounds familiar.
There's hardcover books, they all look kind of the same, they all have these white spines with red letters, and I thought they were the legit versions when I was young. I didn't realize that they were heavily edited. And so I had grown up reading the Classics Illustrated children's edited version of Huckleberry Finn, which is a book I've come to love since. and went back to it, and I'm like, how did they handle Jim in this book? And it turns out they just cut him out.
Oh my goodness.
Like, it's Huckleberry Finn without the character of Jim. And I'm like, what?
Well, it's a good thing you read the full version and you found it. Otherwise, you could have gotten yourself into a lot of trouble.
Oh, no, when I got to Mon and I realized that I did, like, when I was in that class where we were dealing with Huck Finn, I did a whole presentation on this book and how they got rid of Jim. Like...
That's amazing.
Much to my teacher's horror. It's like, they did what? Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Dr. Lisa M. Daly, one of the editors on Flights from the Rock, and now has a novella out in the Slipstreamers series called Navigating Stories. Lisa, what was your favorite childhood book?
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
That tracks. That's very on brand for you. Yeah.
My great uncle gave me a beautiful old copy. Probably dates to the First or Second World War. Must be the first. Probably dates to the First World War. There's no publication information on it, which I think started in the 30s. But it's really poor paper quality, and it's probably one of the first combination books of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And he would try to get me to read it. And I would sit down and read it with him. And I enjoyed that one much more than when he would get me to read the poems of Tennyson to him, because that was another old book he gave me. And at, 10, 12 years old, Tennyson is a bit much. So at least the Alice in Wonderland I could understand and enjoy sharing that with my great uncle.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Next we have Alicia Morrissey. What is your favorite childhood book?
So hard, because my childhood books stick with me today. I have a whole shelf of books that I still like to go back to. I loved Charlotte's Web like nobody's business.
That's an amazing book.
Yeah, I recently read it to my niece and nephew over FaceTime, and that went over really well. They loved it. I definitely lean hard on my Nancy Drew roots, although I recently reread one, and it is not good.
It could use a modern adaptation, like a modern writer going over and, like, giving it a good spit polish.
I don't know. Loved Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. But books shaped me as a child. Books were my constant companion. I was regularly being told to get out of the house and go play. And I would stick a book down the back of my pants and bring it with me and hide somewhere that I couldn't be seen.
That's adorable.
And read my book.
That's perfect. I wish I'd thought of that. Yeah. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Jed Mckay, author for Marvel Comics. He has written 3 volumes of his ongoing series, Black Cat. He's also currently writing Taskmaster, a villain series focused on the villain from the upcoming Black Widow movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And he's written short fiction for Dystopia from the Rock.
Favorite book from childhood? Again, I always have a hard time with favorites. One of the books that really stuck with me was a book I found in the elementary school library called the Citadel of Chaos. It was a Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone fighting fantasy book. It was like a choose your own adventure, but with like a role playing game style game system built into it. But it had these these illustrations which are just so spectacular, and it's just so phantasmagorical and strange that I think it was a real it had a real impact on me as a kid. So I think I probably dug it out when I was in like the 2nd grade or something. And I would take it. I think I took it out so many times that by the time I left elementary school, the librarian just said, "Here, you can take this. You can just have it."
Okay.
So I still got it somewhere.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was Russ Nicholson who did the art in it. Yeah, and it's just such good, weird, fantasy art. Like it wasn't the sort of normal high fantasy stuff. It's just very strange and just, very evocative.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have B.C. Laybolt, the Canadian independent author of the 10th Lunan Regiment series. What was your favorite childhood book?
Okay. This is going to be, well, maybe it won't be shocking to a lot of people that know me. My favorite childhood book was The Color of Space by H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay, yeah, that'll do it. That explains a lot about you. I get it. Okay.
and Cujo. I read Cujo, and I was like, oh my god, people can write this. This is amazing. My mind is now blown.
Yeah, no, I love Cujo as well. I love Lovecraft, but I didn't read them as children. I gotta say that. I read them when I was like 30.
So, yeah, I had a really dark childhood anyway, so to me that was like a Saturday morning cartoon. I was just like, oh, wow, people can have these thoughts, and they can put them on paper, and it's okay. So I was good to go at that point. I was probably, I'm going to say 15.
Okay, that's a pretty broad stretch for childhood, though. That makes sense. Yeah, no, I was picturing like 6, and I was like, my god, man.
If I had had access to it, I totally would have read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, would have bought me several years.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have on the line J.E. Solo. J.E. Solo, what was your favorite childhood book? Favorite book from when you were a child?
Let me think. I was partial to Charlotte's Web.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, that really had an impact on me. I also was crazy for Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales.
Yeah.
Oscar Wilde, Brothers Grimm, Aesop even.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff was huge for me when I was a little kid.
Awesome. Okay. Classics. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Sarah Thompson, who in February released her first book through Engine Books called The Love of Summer. Sarah Thompson, what was your favorite childhood book?
The Outsiders.
I just met a bunch of kids that were reading that. I have never read that, and everyone's like, how have you not read that? It's the stereotypical kid novel.
Do you know why it is, though?
Why?
It was written by a kid.
No, I knew that, yeah. And my favorite thing... And I wrote a book about teenagers when I was one, and my favorite thing, I looked up that writer, her favorite thing people did that annoyed her, that is also the thing that annoys me, people telling you don't write kids realistically when you are one. Like, I'm very sorry, adult who's writing a kid's book, you don't know what kids are like.
Well, you don't remember, really, not the same as someone who's living it.
Yeah.
And I read that book until it fell apart.
Yeah.
And then some, I'm sure. But, and then, of course, the movie came out, which was doubly exciting.
There was a movie?
Yeah, it's Emilio Estevez and Tom Cruise and...
So it's all your favorite people.
Patrick Swayze.
All your favorite people.
Well, I don't know if any of them are really my favorite people. Rob Lowe. All the big stars of that time period were in it.
Interesting. So this wasn't recent?
No, God, no.
But no, I would love it if it was. Like, imagine if they got together, those same actors, and made The Outsiders again, but they're all 40, 50. It'd be fun.
There you go.
Yeah. But they're still playing teenagers.
Ralph Macchio, whatever his name is, he was in it too, I think.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. It's a great movie if you feel like watching it sometime.
All right.
I have it on VHS.
Okay. Well, if a VHS player exists anywhere, we'll have to do that.
There's 2 in my house.
Of course there are. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Lorelana Dunn, the superstar short story author who recently put out her first full novel, Ashes, which came out in June 2020 from Engine Books. Lorelana Dunn, what is your favorite childhood book?
Ooh, I'm going to say Dragonsinger by Anne McCaffrey.
I see. I've never heard of that. What is this?
So Anne McCaffrey has a very long series. She passed away a few years ago, but I believe 2 of her children, I think, continue to write. So it might just be 1, but towards the end of her career, she started co-authoring with her son, at least, and then when she kind of bowed out or stopped writing, he continued on. But basically, she had created this world that is inherently has a danger, and people called dragon riders are linked with different dragons when they hatch in order to protect the civilization, etc., etc. It's very interesting. I was always surprised as a child that it was called science fiction as opposed to fantasy, but when you get later into the series, you realize they are actually humans who have moved to a different planet through the use of technology, so I thought that was pretty cool. But there is a trilogy set within that world that is geared towards young adults and for a younger audience. And so Dragonsinger is the second of the 3, and I think as a younger child, I probably reread that 5 or 6 times just because I really enjoyed it so much.
Okay. Interesting. I might have to check that out sometime. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Kayla Krantz, who's calling in from Detroit. She's originally from Houston. She writes the Rituals of the Night series. Kayla, what is your favorite childhood book?
The only book I really remember reading as a child was Because of Winn-Dixie. And it just always stuck with me. There's something about like an animal companion that's just more powerful than human friendships, if that makes sense.
I was about to say I'd never heard of that, but there was a movie about that. I seem to recall the name Winn-Dixie. What's this about?
It's this little girl moves to a new town, and she doesn't have any friends, but she finds this dog, and through the dog's antics, she ends up making friends with a whole bunch of people, and just really... This is a really, touching book.
Okay. Nice. That sounds lovely. Animal friend books are always interesting to me. I find them really weird. I'll look at them from afar and be like, ooh, you know what I mean? But then I'll read one or I'll watch a movie and I'll be in tears by the end. It just always manages to tug on the heartstrings. Yeah. Every time. Yeah. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Morgan Murray, author. Currently, he has the book Dirty Birds with Breakwater Book. Let's see. Morgan Murray, what was your favorite childhood book? Favorite book you read when you were a kid?
It depends on which point in childhood, but I think one that has stuck with me the longest. Well, first, I loved all the Dr. Seuss books when I was little, just how they sound. When I was little, but the one that's kind of stuck with me into adulthood was this book called Fielder's Choice by Rick Norman. It's an obscure book. It was published by some small indie press from the States, and somehow it ended up at the Scholastic Book Fair at our school, and it was about a baseball player. And at the time, I was reading only sports books, really bad ghostwritten hockey autobiographies and the 5 sort of children's novels about sports that were never very good. So this book had a baseball player on the cover, so I bought it. We got to buy one book at the book fair, and this was the one I got. And the book was about this guy named Fielder. I think it was his last name. I can't remember, but and he was this really successful baseball player. Talked about his kooky childhood, and that was fun. And then he ended up getting drafted into the Air Force, and his plane got shot down over Japan or something, and he got taken prisoner, and he ended up in a Japanese POW camp, which was awful. And he taught the emperor's son how to throw his special pitch. And I think that's all I remember from the book. But it was really good and powerful, and it stuck with me for a long time. So it was that one, and I read Wayne Gretzky's hokey autobiography straight through without stopping in 20 hours when I was 12. And I thought it was just the greatest. So one of those two.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.